One of the most commonly asked questions that I get is how do you set your rate on Upwork? In this video, I'm going to look at 3 tips to setting your hourly rate on Upwork so you never have to question that again. So the first thing that we're going to examine is comparing industries to get a better understanding of what your hourly rate should be. So let's take an example of this. So if you go onto the client dashboard, right? So if you don't have a client account, you can make a client account with Upwork. You have the one over here as a freelancer over here, and then I'm logged into my client account, okay? And then what you do, go to My Jobs, go to Talent, scroll over here, go to Discover. And when you click on Discover, it shows you a pool of talent, right? All the individuals who are on Upwork with various skills. For example, video editing, virtual assistant, social media marketing, whatever it is. So let's just take a hypothetical situation and we're looking for someone who's an accountant. And we want to check industry standards to see what is the rate for an accountant right now, right? And what I recommend over here is that you should go and use the filter system over here. So obviously we have an accountant, but that ranges. And the way I recommend going about doing this is that think about your own skills. Are you an expert, intermediate, or beginner in terms of how much you made on Upwork, and use the same filter mechanisms to draw out and find out other individuals in your realm. So for example, let's just say over here we go, say you're someone who's an intermediate with regards to skill, right? So we'll click over here between 10 to 30. Let's say, for example, over here, job success, you're also someone that has a JSS score above 80%. And we're looking for a freelancer over here. Let's just say you've earned over $1,000 on the platform. And you've billed over 100 hours right now. So now what this does is that you have a bunch of filters that are set up over here. And then also you're searching for accountant. So let's see what pops up, right? So right off the bat, we're noticing, for example, Victor D. So he's a certified accountant and tax advisor, right? So let's open this in a new window over here. Let's go back over here. We notice $25 per hour. She's earned about $6,000. Let's click on a few of these profiles to get a better understanding of, what their background is, what kind of certificates they have, just so that we can gauge for ourselves what our hourly rate should be. So right now, I'll just open up 3 just to give as an example. All right, so you open up the first one over here, Victor, 100%. He's a certified accountant, tax advisor. These are the services that he can provide. He's made about $20,000. These are the number of hours he's worked. Here's his work history as well. And then we look at his portfolio, his certificates. So from here, it seems, again, from what I'm understanding over here, and again, I have no background in accounting, but what it seems like, okay, he has one certificate over here. Employment history, there's not really much over there either. He has a few other experiences over here. And you know what? He's getting a decent amount of jobs in the range of $30 per hour, okay? And as you can see, he has, 66 jobs completed, 27 that are open. And we're noticing that, okay, there are $30 jobs over here. Even the jobs he's doing over here, around $30. Okay, so that's interesting. So that we have that as a benchmark, one benchmark over here. Now, for example, we look over here. She works an accountant full-time. She's charging about $25 per hour. We look at her earnings, the number of hours she's earned, and let's see what she's doing. Okay, so she's charging a little bit on the lower end, $20, $15, so a little bit on the lower end, right? And what this is doing for us, as we scroll through individual certificates, their employment histories, we're trying to gauge what the average rate might be. So from this one, we're noticing it's a bit more of a downward trend. She's from Ireland, but we're noticing, okay, she's charging maybe 20, sometimes 15, right? Just to get a better understanding. And we see over here, bookkeeper, accountant. We see some of the things that he's mentioning over here of what he can do. He's charging $19 per hour and he's made $100,000. Wow. Okay. So now this gives us a bit more of an understanding. So, okay, so he's going really low, $8 over here. He's going $19 over here, $14 over here, right? And what you want to do, again, I'm showing for the sake of the video, I'm going very fast, but what you want to do is you want to pull up maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 profiles who are similar to you in experience, and then use the filter system as I've shown you over here in order to get a better understanding. And from here, if we look at these profiles and say, you know what, it seems like maybe between $15 and $30 would be the average rate for an individual who's an intermediate accountant on Upwork. So that's one way of doing that. The second way of doing it over here is that you start with a yearly goal. Let's just say hypothetically, you want to start by making $100,000 per year on Upwork. You take that number of $100,000 and you divide that by the number of weeks. So let's just say, for example, you have $100,000 over here, divide that by 52 weeks, you get $1,900 or $1,923 to be exact, right, per week. And then you divide that by 40 hours per week, right, just to get as an example though. Right, that means that you have to charge $48 per hour USD, work 40 hours per week in order to hit that target of $100,000 per year. If that's feasible and you have the time to do that based on the fact that Upwork is your main source of income, then this should be the standard that you go with in terms of setting your rate. But for example, if you say to yourself, hey, you know what, that's not feasible, I'm only doing Upwork part-time, then you need to adjust the hours and you need to maybe adjust even, for example, how much you want to make. And you need to figure out with these numbers, a number that works in terms of your goal, number one, number two, that works with regards to the number of hours you can work, and an hourly rate that suits what your experience is at the moment. So maybe in this situation, you go, wait, that's way too much. Maybe you need to come down to $60,000 per year, and you divide that by 52 weeks, and you go, okay, now I'm gonna make to make $60,000 per year, I have to make $1,153 per week. So in that scenario, if I divide that by 40 hours, I'm only charging $28 per hour. But then you can say to yourself, hey, you know what? I think I can do about, charging about $35 per hour based on the industry that I'm in and the experience that I have. So therefore, I can play around with those numbers to get a better understanding. So in essence, you almost have to work backwards in order to figure out what exactly your hourly rate should be. The third thing to keep in mind over here is that cheaper is not necessarily better. A lot of times individuals, what they do is they think that, okay, if I charge $7 per hour, as you see over here, or $8 per hour over here, or $10 per hour over here, that must help me in getting better jobs. Yes, that helps, but at the same time, what you are doing is that you're setting yourself up as being someone who is, at the bottom end. And someone who's willing to work for pennies, number one, and number two, for the client, it doesn't necessarily translate into going for you, because if a client is going on Upwork, they're looking to reduce their headache by hiring someone overseas, someone who can do the work maybe while they're sleeping and they're working in a different time zone. But for them, what's going to happen is that if you're someone who is a lot cheaper than the industry average, they're going to think that either this person doesn't know what they're doing, or the fact that they're going to waste their time having to explain everything to them. And then in that sense, they're going to be like, you know what, it doesn't make sense for me to invest all that time in order to get the right freelancer, because that's going to have more issues for me to begin with. So cheaper, as I mentioned before, is not better. Instead, focus on being something that is reasonable and you still can provide value. And the fourth and last point that I want to mention over here is that you need to test your rate in order to see if it's the right rate for you. So for example, let's just say, for example, you're applying to jobs and all the individuals that come back to you in the next 3 weeks, all the clients say, hey, you know what? Your rate is really low. I thought it'd be a lot higher for someone with this background in this industry. Immediately, that should say to you, you need to raise your rates. On the flip side, if you're applying to jobs with the rate that you think that you're worth, and every time the client comes back, or majority of clients come back and say, hey, you know what, you're actually a lot more than what we expected, and you're actually a bit more overpriced, immediately that should give you an alarm bell as well, that you should reduce your rates. So in this situation, it's a matter of testing it out in order to find out if this is the best rate for you. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video and it helped you further understand how to set your hourly rate. I would love to know your thoughts in the comment section below of how you went about setting your rate on Upwork.